So in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and get started this morning. So thanks again, everybody, too, for joining us today. I'm Jessica Ponte. I'm one of the counselors at Calvert High, and I'm just going to quickly introduce my fellow counselors. So Dr. Perry is not here this morning because she's on maternity leave. She'll be out of the office until late February. So in her absence, we're going to be taking over her caseload and helping out, and I'll explain that as we go. So Miss Aris, who will be presenting today, she works with students last names F through J, and while Dr. Perry's out on maternity leave, she'll be working with students last names A and B. And I'm Miss Ponte. I have last names K through Q, and while Dr. Perry's out, I'll be working with students last names C and D. And then we have Mr. Verlich, our guy of the office. He works with students last names R through Z. And while Dr. Perry is out, he will be working with students last names E. So now that you know everybody, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Miss Aris, who's got a great presentation plan for us today.
Hi, good morning. So we have this series of 4 junior breakfasts. I was trying to think this morning, how many years have we been doing this? I'm going to guess something like 7 years. I'm shooting in between 6 and 8. So what we try to do is a lot of times we give this information to the students, but we want to make sure that parents hear it as well. Because even though your student is very stressed about the college search process, so are we as parents. So what we try this first one is to say, okay, well, we're searching for a good fit for your student. What are some things that we should be looking at? So here's some factors to consider. And I understand this is a very stressful situation. At this time next year, most of your students will have already applied to the colleges they choose. So within a year, they have to kind of explore all their options and make the best choices for them. So one thing to consider is location. I mean, every year I have students who are like, well, I just want to go to school in California and be as far away from Calvert County as I possibly can be. However, when you have an impacted tooth or you want to come home for Thanksgiving or things like that, those are things to consider because they cost money. And a lot of times if the student hasn't really been away from their household, to go that far where they don't have contact, not only will be additional cost, but it can be an additional stressor. The other thing is major and flexibility. I have a son who's a senior, thank goodness this year, but in the first month of college, he changed his major 3 times. And I remember saying to him when he picked a school, make sure you pick something that if you change out of this major, you have something else you would choose. Otherwise, you're kind of like stuck at this school that doesn't even have a major that you like. So make sure you not only have the major you want, you wouldn't want to spend the money for an application fee and do all of that, and then not have the major you want, but go beyond that. Do they have other majors they might want if they change your mind? Because these are 18-year-olds. They don't necessarily have a lot of life experience. And as they get in and learn about things and learn about themselves, they might want to make a change in the direction they want to choose. Size. I remember with my daughter that every time we went to Penn State, NC State to visit Maryland, she just immediately was kind of turned off. She ended up going to UMBC. And I think for her at that age, she needed a place that was a little more homey, a little more like personalized because that fit her personality. Whereas somebody else might be, I like large numbers. So you kind of got to look at the size and see if that's a fit for your child's personality. I found that within the first 10 minutes of all my kids' tours, walking around a campus, they kind of knew if they would consider it or if it was a no-go pretty much immediately because they just didn't get a good vibe from it. I always tell everyone, this is where you're living, this is where you're eating, this is where you're sleeping, this is where your friends are. So you want to make sure it's a good fit. Other things to consider are requirements for admission. And this can be a hard discussion with your student, but if their GPA is a 2.5, a 78%, it's going to be very hard to get into Maryland's engineering program. So you have to really look at the schools you want and the majors you're considering and say, what is the average GPA that got into Towson last year? Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't apply for one that you're below the average, but you shouldn't do that for every application. If you could find one that you're above their average, that's probably actually going to get you more money. One that you're below the average, one that you hit it pretty much straight on. So you kind of want to see, am I someone that generally at this point in my life can get into that school? Is it worth the application fee? Now, I've had students who really want to go to Maryland's engineering program. They know they can't get in. They go to CSM a year, and after a year or 30 credits at CSM, Maryland doesn't look at your high school GPA. So if you had like a rough time and you kind of want a clean start, that's an option, but all things to think about. And then extracurricular, like I say, you live there and you might not necessarily be part of their varsity team, but maybe you like, oh, this school has ultimate frisbee or opportunities to be in student government or things like that, study abroad programs. So look at what kind of extracurriculars, because that is part of college life and part of the enriching experience. And of course, which we'll go into this more with later junior breakfasts, but cost. And that's a hard conversation to have with your student as well, because all I ever wanted to do was go to Adelphi. But after you apply and after you get the financial aid packet from that school costs $15,000 more than another school that they've applied to. I had my daughter in tears. She's 26 now. She's fine, but the school she really wanted to go to was going to cost about $17,000 more than UMBC. So she chose that. Now my sons go to school out of state, but it costs no more with the scholarship money and aid they give them than University of Maryland. So you always got to look, and that's the hard part, because you've now looked at these colleges, you've searched, you've chosen the 5 you want to apply to, and one might even be your most favorite choice. But in the end, and this is an adult lesson kids have to learn, it does kind of come down to money. A little bit of money difference is one thing, but you don't want your student to owe $200,000 when they graduate. That's, almost a house. So I remember telling my sons, you need to keep your loans under $40,000 for 4 years. So the rest you're either going to have to make or this or that. They're pretty close to that. They just paid their final bill for undergraduates. They might have gone maybe $5,000 over that, but kind of keep that in the range, because it's just 4 years and it's getting you to a job, but you want to make sure that you're then going to get in that job and not have this $400 a month payment for the next 10 years. So money does matter. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay, so these are some websites that you can use. I think that's always a good start. Like my daughter was interested in biomedical engineering, and she just started what colleges offer biomedical engineering as the major, because it's kind of a unique one. And so then you could just search, and then you get a list of those and go on to those college websites. You can go on virtual tours. They'll talk about extra scholarships they have, special programs they want. You can really get a pretty good feel of a school and cost, all that, by just Googling the colleges themselves. So Google Towson University and kind of get an idea of what they have. Other search engines are College Board, which is where you sign up for the SAT. They also have some very informative breakdowns of each school, in general, how much does it cost to go there? What is the demographics? What is the average SAT score? What is the average GPA they took? So it's a way to sort of narrow down. And if they already took the SAT, then you also have an account already made. And again, the college websites themselves are very useful. And then there's things like CapEx. So CapEx, you create an account and you put in what you want. I'd like to have a liberal arts school that has less than 4,000 students, who has this as a major, who offer ultimate frisbee. And then you put all of those things in and it spits out schools for you. And it also gives you a matrix as to what's your chance of getting into those schools. So if you have a student who's like, I don't even know where to start, something like CapEx would be a good way, because you put in all the things they're kind of looking for, and then it'll spit out a bunch of schools. And then you could go back to those college websites and investigate those schools and then start to plan a visit. I really do think it's important to go to a school. We've had students who went to Ohio, get there, hate it, and come right back home. And I mean, that's a lot of money lost. I really do believe that if your student goes to those schools, or get a feel if this is a place they could see themselves belonging. So plan a visit. And here's some questions you can ask on your visit. What is the average size of the introduction class? So that means like English 1010, Psych 101, Psych 1010, basic classes that everybody at that college probably has to take, pre-calc, things like that. Because, you know, at the University of Maryland, Psych 1010 could be 300 people in your class. It's not going to be something that there's going to be a lot of teacher-student interaction, and you have to know your student if that's good. But that same school might say our average class size is 23-1. Well, 23-1, because they also have an aerospace engineering class that only has 7 kids in it. So you're looking at averages. So it's important to ask, what are your baseline introductory size classes? Instead of what is your average class size? And then, are there opportunities for undergraduate research? I know that, for example, at the University of Maryland, once you're a sophomore, you can be part of research projects. This really definitely goes for people who are interested in the sciences, because those kind of experiences are very good for people who want to pursue areas of research and give you a really early introduction to that career field. Some people are interested in an honors college. Honors colleges sometimes have students take some additional courses, and they get that endorsement on their diploma. So it's a good thing to ask, is the honors college available? Do I have the GPA to get into it? Are the benefits of the honors college, you know, something that I feel is worth pursuing or not? Learning communities or freshman experience. So at the University of Maryland, if you want to be a foreign language student, they have a dorm whose entire floor is speaking French. So it allows you to be immersed in the language or in languages. And somebody else might have one for women in engineering. They might have, you know, freshman experiences. I know there's a college, I can't remember the name of it, Pennsylvania, that every freshman studies abroad the first semester. And that's kind of their introduction to the college world. So you might want to ask, what other kind of like learning communities do you have related to your child's interest, hobbies, career desires? What is the average college debt? Well, again, that's important, because in the end, whether you got your degree from school A or B in accounting, let's say, you're going to have to enter the world as an accountant, and those salaries are going to be pretty much similar. So you want to know, when I get out and I have a degree in education, am I going to make enough money to be able to handle the debt I had? And again, these are really hard conversations to have, because our 18-year-olds really don't know. My kids were like, am I a dependent? Am I like, we learned so much just going through the process. You know, my daughter is $15,000 a lot of money? Yes, it's a lot of money. So it's very important for them to realize this is college and you're excited about it and you want all these opportunities. However, it does have a price tag, and we have to think beyond the 4 years as well. Work study, and I think colleges are getting a lot better than this. I really think it's important that when you left college, you have some kind of internship or something that you can say to put on your resume that you really already have job experience. Another aspect of work study, and you might see that when you fill out the FAFSA, is you could get a job on campus, and that job could go towards your tuition. And how many graduated 4 years? So for every semester you pay extra above that, it costs more, and maybe that wasn't part of your financial plan. So it's kind of important to know how many students that go to this school actually complete it in 4 years. And I'm back to the internships. I think it's important because, I mean, you're coming out with everybody else coming out of college, and if you don't have that job experience, my son is doing accounting and he's doing an internship, and he said, Mom, I learned more the first 2 weeks of working there than I ever learned in college. And it's not that he didn't learn things in his accounting class, but it's one thing to learn things out of a book and another thing to say, okay, I'm in an office and I have to deal with clients and I have to like practically apply my skills. So I really do think it's important. So that's a good question to ask when you're on a visit. Some more questions are like, what kind of career services do they link you to jobs? Do they help you get interviews as you're getting ready to graduate? What percentage of kids live on campus? I know that there's certain campuses. UMBC used to be that, but it's kind of changing a little bit where everybody kind of goes home and so much of their population is a commuter that on the weekends is like a ghost town. Now, if your student would want to come home or they'd be okay with it, it's fine. But I think it's a good question to ask to see, you know, is there still a lot of events and a lot of things happening on campus during the weekends? How long are guaranteed accommodations at the dorm? Now, you know, I put that one on there is because my niece went to Towson, and once you're a sophomore at Towson, when she went there, she graduated about 3 years ago, but they would not guarantee you a dorm, and you would have to like get an apartment off campus, which is an easy walk for Towson. However, my niece got AP credit, so she's halfway through her freshman year and losing her dorm. So to me, okay, well, wait a minute. I'm not sure that I want my 18-year-old halfway through the freshman year because they're now credit-wise a sophomore to be losing dorm access. So I don't think this comes up a lot, but I think it's a good question to ask. And again, do students go home on the weekend? You know, what kind of things there are to get involved in? And school's important. However, there's more to life than school. You realize you have to be able to, you know, be involved, like be part of this college community. And those are all things that can build your resume. Those are all things that can help you make contacts and friends that you can use later in life. Tutoring. My daughter actually ended up getting a degree in chemical engineering from UMBC. You know what class she never had in high school? Chemistry. So it was kind of like a quick change because it was a bio focus. And, okay, well, so the first day of Chem 1, she went into the tutoring place and says, I want a tutor. Before anybody else took them, I'm taking them because I have no chemistry background, and, you know, here I go. So it's always good to know what kind of extensive tutoring programs they have. And then what methods of transportation? Like my son's school, if you don't have a car, they're not far from Charlotte, about 30 minutes. But if you don't have a car, there is no public transportation to the airport or to the bus station or to the grocery store, anything like that. So that's something to just think about because, again, they live there. If they need to get something and, you know, they're 8 hours away from me, I'm going to either have to give them a car or they're going to have to be at a place where they can get on public transportation.
Before you
I see there's a
before you
question.
move on, Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. I know you're on a roll, so I didn't want to interrupt you. But the question in the chat is that it's probably best to plan an official visit, but if that isn't possible, do you think that it's still beneficial to go and walk around campus without a tour guide and kind of do your own tour? What are your thoughts on that, Miss Aris?
I think it is. It's funny. That's exactly how my sons go to Wingate. That's exactly how we did it because we couldn't coordinate it. We were hitting a bunch of schools at once. But I do think it's important that you go there when there's students on campus, because just seeing the atmosphere on the school and seeing other kids walking around, and you can walk by classrooms and kind of see, the size of them and things like that. If you can't get an official tour, which would probably be the best because they could answer some of these specific questions I'm talking, but at least if you're going to do your own, try to do it like our spring break. Most colleges are in full swing. So to do it when you could see the population and see the interactions of students on that campus. Does that answer the question? And then this last one is just, the whole purpose of college is to have a job and to be able to maintain, the lifestyle you'd like as an adult. So it's important to say, what do they have to take me from this college campus to the adult world? Now, I made a checklist, and as you walk around, you might find things that you find more useful. But I always found it important to know, like, how do I apply? Where do I send the transcript? When are these things due? When is the FAFSA due? Because for most of them in Maryland are March 1st, but there are some that have slightly different earlier time frames. I want to know, how much does this school cost? And then how much is it going to cost after they tell me how much money they give us? Most money that students get are from the colleges. So if Towson really wants you, or Frostburg wants you, they'll go, well, we're accepting you and we want to give you $8,000 a semester.